Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, folks, I guess it's happening pretty much exactly as I predicted. Unsurprisingly, again, I'm not some major big brain genius or some sort of gifted future teller. No, I'm simply just a regular dude who can see things clearly with his own eyes. I can put two and two together. It was obvious from the start that Schumer's little government shutdown here would backfire. And backfire it is so spectacularly. Folks, you can feel the panic setting in. You know, from the beginning, this was supposed to be a show of strength for the Democrats, a coordinated media play to hit Republicans, paint them as reckless extremists. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez taking to social media to tell us Donald Trump wants to kill billions upon trillions upon gazillions of people and children's. But yeah, obviously that was never going to work. And as the conversation continued and more people realized that Democrats are basically full of it, eventually the focus groups and the polls were going to start shifting towards the right, and that, my friends, is exactly what is happening. Now the numbers are coming out, and it's becoming increasingly obvious that the public isn't buying this Schumer shutdown nonsense. The Democrats once again gambled on political theater over basic fiscal responsibility, and now the people are turning on them. So yeah, less of a power move and more of a slow motion train wreck. And I got the data to prove it. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on. As Schumer is losing his shirt, we got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so remember before the shutdown even started, Chuck Schumer was confronted with some polling data that showed that people weren't exactly on his side, and he brushed it off, basically calling it fake polling numbers.
Now, I know the leader is going to show a poll that says that Democrats will be blamed for the shutdown. There are many more polls that show Republicans are blamed. The question in that poll is bias.
But that clip, of course, was laughable, considering the poll that he was dismissing was actually from the New York Times, you know, one of the most establishment-friendly outlets out there, an outlet that literally carries the water in the most dishonest ways for the Democrat. Well, even they were showing that this wasn't a good idea, but he claimed, oh, it's right-wing propaganda. I guess the New York Times is suddenly a right-wing propaganda machine. That moment, of course, was quite laughable, but that moment was also the writing on the wall, and now, well, here we are. We got a Harvard-Harris survey, which again is a left-wing pollster, and even with their usual left-leaning sample, 36% of respondents said that this government shutdown would make them more likely to vote Republican, compared to only 34% saying Democrat. So Republicans are clearly winning the shutdown debate, and actually that was the next question, right? When those same respondents were asked who will eventually and inevitably win the shutdown, 62% said Republicans. That's a complete beatdown. And also keep in mind, again, the numbers are likely much higher considering this polling sample surveyed 2,400 registered voters, not likely voters, not people who are politically engaged and regularly make it to the polls. If they were sampling likely voters, then whenever they sample registered voters, there's usually a bunch of people who aren't exactly politically inclined, they're not paying attention, they just get what they see in the mainstream media. Ooh, Trump's racist, this, that, and the other. These are misinformed, low information voters, and in many cases they're non-voters. They're people who don't actually involve themselves in the democratic process, and so if they sampled for likely voters, we always see the same thing. The numbers tend to skew more heavily in favor of Republicans. So again, likely the numbers are much better for Republicans and much more devastating for Chuck Schumer and his pathetic little ploy here. But here's where things get really bad for Democrats, because obviously they've attempted to do what they usually do. They stick their chest out and act all self-righteous as if they're fighting some sort of deplorable Republican evil, this deep white male evil that seeks to exploit everybody at the behest of billionaires. And so clearly we've seen that campaign all over social media, most of it playing out on TikTok these days. Just a bunch of Democrat bot politicians going blah, 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 kids dying, oh, blah, 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 the billionaires. So they adopt this very self-righteous tone as if they're fighting for something righteous, something that the people really want, that's really important for voters, right? Well, wrong. Here's the most telling stat. The next question, which asked voters whether they even want what the Democrats are fighting for in the first place. The question was, should the Democrats end the shutdown by accepting a continuing resolution at current levels of expenditure until the actual spending bills are passed, or should the Democrats hold out until they get additional funds for Obamacare? 65% of respondents want them to accept the continuing resolution at current spending levels. Voters don't even want what the Democrats are shutting the government down for and causing all kinds of pain. That's essentially a full-on rejection of Chuck Schumer's whole agenda. People understand that the system is broken. They understand that it's being abused. They understand the entire intention of these cuts was to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse. They probably also understand the clever accounting tricks that Democrats are playing to fund illegal migrant health care. They understand that there's a massive problem in the country when it comes to this corruption, this overspending, this fiscal irresponsibility. They also see the national stacking debt, which is what, over $38 trillion at this point? And so what people really want is less spending, more responsible spending. They probably also know that Obamacare is a complete and utter disaster.
Premiums are going up either way. The question is what the exposure is. I mean, we need to stop and appreciate what an indictment this is of the Affordable Care Act, that now we have to shovel $500 billion into it, or people will not buy the product or won't think it's worth its value. I mean, Alicia also raised the point of fraud, which is a really, really salient one when we're talking about people losing coverage. Basically, what the Biden administration did was make it so many people paid nothing for these plans, and they were auto re-enrolled every year, didn't have to go back and sign up. And what that means is some people don't know they're enrolled. 40% of people in these types of plans had no claims in 2024. I mean, this should be a bipartisan outrage to fix, but it's not, because Democrats have made it all about, turned it into a panic about health care.
But insurers get the subsidies even if the people don't know that they have the insurance. Is that it, Kate?
Right. It gets paid to insurers. And so I think here, first of all, Republicans should not negotiate on this to reopen the government. I mean, Democrats have voted a dozen times when Biden was in office to open the government. But if they do get into talks on subsidies, they really need to look at those free plans. They need to at least cut off new subsidies. I mean, any number of things. A clean extension of these subsidies should be a non-starter for Republicans.
And so, of course, as the conversation continues, more and more people are gathering that what they want is not what Chuck Schumer wants. And clearly, Chuck Schumer isn't doing this for the voters. He's doing it for himself, for his own political career, which is in current freefall right now. He's doing it to prove to the left-wing base that he can fight. He's trying to galvanize them. But at what cost? Look at the damage he's creating. And I think as every day passes, more of that damage and pain is going on his shoulders. And that's actually another important point here. It's like I've been saying forever, the polls, as every day goes by, will continue to shift more and more in favor of Republicans. Just take a look at this Morning Compost poll. Now, of course, you'll notice that they're showing inverse numbers, blaming Republicans, but again, this is the Morning Compost. These numbers cannot and should not be taken seriously. They are largely Democrat oversampled every time. The independents that they question are generally left-leaning. They've been wrong on almost every single issue, on almost every single election, but even their numbers are shifting dramatically in favor of Republicans from just last week. In the last 7 days, 2% fewer are now blaming Republicans, and 6% more are blaming Democrats. In other words, a movement of 8 points against Chuck Schumer in a poll that already leans and skews heavily left-wing. So come on, when even the most biased pollsters in the game are starting to show complete and utter collapse for the left-wing narrative, well then you know the left-wing narrative is dead. It's been obvious since the start, and even some Democrats let the truth slip, like Sri Thanadar here. Yeah, he's not exactly a skilled politician, and well, here he is basically admitting the truth.
Returning back to Detroit this morning after the Republicans failed to show up in the U.S. House. We got to make sure Americans have the health care that they need. And if that means we got to shut this government down, so be it.
It's political. It's blackmail. And it's not even for a righteous cause. It's for a cause that voters aren't even interested in. It's for the cause of Chuck Schumer's re-election campaign to the Senate. They thought that once again they could weaponize another issue, weaponize a shutdown, use it as blackmail to make President Trump look bad. But instead, once again, they've exposed themselves. They've exposed their own arrogance and incompetence. And I think increasingly we're seeing a simple truth reveal itself, that the American people are done with these pathetic Democrat games and ploys, these performance art, divisive tactics. People don't want more fake emergencies or blackmail. They want accountability. They want balance. They want an end to the chaos. They want fiscally responsible policy. And Chuck Schumer's little play here stands for everything except for that. Another disgusting, cynical ploy from the Democrats that obviously was bound to backfire, and here it is. Full-blown backfire. Little Chucky boy, I got one message for you.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Good job, you absolute fool. Anyways, that's what I got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.